Long ago, when humans first started to think about how they would spread across the solar system and then the stars, the Jupiter system was an extremely obvious target. Lots of moons, so lots of real estate to work with. Immense energy to tap, solar or nuclear, or even tidal generators, along with fuel reserves to last for untold centuries. Unimaginable mineral wealth to fuel construction or feed greedy industrial hubs elsewhere in the system. Jupiter is perfect as a midway between the inner and outer solar system, making it a prime location for infrastructure, while also acting as a key defensive point. And the amounts of Jupiter Trojans only added to these benefits, while also providing additional incentive to get the area under control. To make things easier for Earth in terms of asteroid management. But two moons had stood above the rest. Firstly, Callisto, a pockmarked mess of impact craters upon craters. It became an attractive target for people to live on due to lower radiation, meaning it would serve as an effective foothold upon the system. It was, however, not particularly exciting, simply a good place to settle down. The second moon, Europa, was far different and a lot more exciting. A little white ball with vast subsurface oceans at twice that of Earth's. In the days before the contact war, this was seen as the single most likely place for humans to find extraterrestrial life. Expected in the form of bacteria, or perhaps simple multicellular life. Of course, in reality, the extraterrestrials found Earth first and weren't merely bacteria when they arrived. Even if Europa did not have life under its ice sheets, so the thinking went, it was still an attractive target purely for that water and what could be done with it. Far-thinking concepts were drawn up, involving the deployment of underwater fusion reactors to generate limitless light and heat for Earth-originating aquatic life. Other mega-projects, injecting never-ending streams of minerals and nutrients to help rapidly accelerate the growth of said life. Archipelagos of submerged habitats would be scattered around like candy, connected by submarines, filling the role of Earth buses and cars. Some of the water would be shipped elsewhere for use in terraforming other worlds at low cost. It is no wonder that with the United Nations victorious in both the Contact War and the Second Haitian War, it turned at least part of its attention to Jupiter once more. Inner system operations had kept the focus for the initial decade, but rapidly, humanity's presence in the stars began to snowball, spreading at greater and greater pace with an ever more secure footing. Much as predicted, humanity spread first to Callisto, littering it with sprawling urban centers, and then throughout the rest of the Jupiter system. Io was industrialized, its automated and lightly crewed facilities generating vast amount of useful resources for the megafactories of Titan. Ganymede saw large underground cities set up. Nowadays, marvels of terraforming vast caverns, as green and beautiful as some of the premium tourist destinations across the whole galaxy. Every other one of the smaller moons was dotted with activity, and the first orbital habitats began being moved into the system. Later, these would collaborate under the national banner of the United Jovian Habitats. But there Europa sat as these first stages of development occurred elsewhere. Nowhere in the solar system had shown a single trace of life, yet that was no guarantee here. Considering the recent history, with an alien power attempting to come in and impose its will upon Earth, with no regard for the feelings of its present inhabitants, it was felt deeply wrong to start building vast cities without having first confirmed life's absence on Europa. So in that stage, there were only researchers in heavily radiation-shielded habitats. Large numbers of them and fairly established, but still only researchers. Once the surface was determined clear of life, these teams turned to trying to break through the ice in order to visit the ocean beneath. They also began inspecting the gigantic lakes that sat snugly in the midst of the icy crust in hopes of finding something. And here came the first discovery. In the largest of these mid-ice lakes, a small isolated bacterial population was found, clinging to existence narrowly. This was momentous enough and immediately required a complete overhaul of long-term plans for Europa. On its own, it would probably have been enough to justify the scrapping of long-term habitats. While this particular ethical chaos was ongoing, the researchers on Europa figured that they came all this way to look at what was in the ocean, and they might as well do it regardless. It is extremely fortunate they did. They quickly set up bases. Right at the very bottom layer of the ice sheets, constructing maintenance areas, moon pools for the deployment of seagoing drones, and control centers for the exploration efforts. As soon as these first automated submarines were sent into the ocean, they were met not by an empty ocean with a few scattered signs of microbe life, but a collection of species so diverse as to almost rival the Earth. Cephalopod-like predators the size of whales, hunting and killing their prey with powerful electroshocks. Swarms of tiny fish that, when sufficiently numerous and densely packed, can win fights with even the most deadly predator and quickly strip the corpse. Shimmering fleets of jellyfish that roam aimlessly. Amphibians that lived much of their lives in natural caverns just above the top of the ocean, exiting solely to feed in the waters below. A seafloor in places, covered in plants and bioluminescent coral-like structures, feeding off the energy from powerful networks of hydrothermal vents. While the quantity of life was certainly much less than those of Earth's oceans, something unsurprising. Given the lack of photosynthesis as a viable source of energy, the meaning of this discovery was clear. Europa was far more alive than anyone had anticipated. When these reports reached Earth, it instantly became obvious that all remaining vestiges of the plans for settlement would have to be scrapped. For a brief few days, conversation turned to how best to research this fascinating and varied ecosystem. Then the final key report came through. The Europans, as they were dubbed at the time, were originally near completely missed by researchers. Every time an underwater drone came anywhere near them, they rapidly fled from view, often successfully doing so before even being spotted by the remote pilots. When noticed, they would be dismissed as merely a skittish species, something not entirely uncommon on Earth after all. The first clue that something was extremely off was the discovery of structures in the seafloor. Crude shapings of rocks, but with clear signs of some tool use. Then, soon after, a drone was set upon by a dozen Europans at once in an attempt to destroy this strange invader. The pilot, unsurprisingly, triggered its ballast tanks and attempted to return to its base, docking it in the moon pool, only for the Europans to pursue it and enter the base. Their strange appearance, something akin to a bioluminescent seal, with an additional grouping of tentacles in its midsection and 12 eyes scattered about its body, caused much confusion among the researchers as they watched the strange display through cameras. Then, the Europans began to seize nearby human tools, putting them to work in the destruction of the drone or various attempts to break through the sealed doors, stopping only to briefly submerge themselves for breathing before returning to work. Eventually, after successfully reducing the offending drone to a collection of scrap, the Europans retreated back into the ocean, taking all the available equipment that could fit into their tentacles. This was, to put it lightly, an unanticipated development. Further, more careful drone deployments yielded yet more evidence of construction and tool use, all at a level comparable with humanity's ancestors. Occasionally, they would emerge into waterless caverns and hunt the residents in packs before returning to their watery home. An extremely developed language, operating via a mixture of vocalizations, sign language, and flashing their biolights, made them able to organize complex groups for large-scale tasks and projects, despite their inability to develop any technology dependent on fire. Their society was formed of a dense patchwork of family clans that closely cooperated when necessary. And as exploration continued, coordinated attempts to sabotage the drones, but generally stayed decentralized most of the time. It is believed that they as a species predate humanity and in fact surpass humans on some measures of intelligence, especially long-term memory and recognition of past social partners. They simply had the poor luck to be stuck underneath kilometers of ice without anything to use for developing fire. Their research efforts instead focused on their own biology and that of their fellow denizens of Europa. Several species had been extremely slowly genetically adapted to serve the needs of the Europans, from dependable docile food sources to a lichen-like plant that, when carefully positioned upon their gills, provided an extended oxygen source while exploring waterless caverns. The response on Earth to this report from Europa could best be described as chaos. Sheer, unadulterated bewilderment amongst all manner of scientists. While the civilians of a species that just a few decades prior had thought itself completely alone in the cosmos, suddenly had to contend with an intelligent species quite literally in its back garden. Several civil servants assigned to overseeing the operations on Europa promptly resigned, completely unwilling to deal with the ethical mess rapidly developing under their watch. In the end, there could only be one response from the species that had fought so hard for self-determination in the face of an imperialistic power. The species that prided itself on a firm belief in the rights of all species to better lives and their rights to explore the stars like any other. The Europans had to be approached as equals, for that was the only right thing to do. Their language was slowly deciphered in one of the greatest feats of linguistic research ever performed by humanity up until that point. This was helped in no small part by the appearance of a small family of Europans that, against the grain of the broader society, decided to approach the strange aliens that were sending all these machines into their homeworld. From the cooperation of this family, researchers eventually learned the Europan language and successfully designed fresh drones for the sole purpose of communicating to the Europans on their terms. It was hard to translate something like, "We are from a different planet and have access to extremely advanced technology, able to travel faster than light," to a species who had never even seen the surface of their homeworld, let alone the stars. But even this hurdle was overcome in time. From there, it was a gradual process of building trust and showing the Europans that humanity had something of use to offer them. Things such as their own personal name for their species, most closely rendered in English as Macassian. No alternative name has yet been proposed and agreed upon by the Macassian for Europa, namely because they had no concept of planets until proper contact with humanity. Thus, no preceding name to describe it. And the singular gigantic ocean which they live in, similarly has no Macassian name, barring a translation of the United Nations name of the Serene Sea. Nowadays, in a supreme twist of irony, the old plans and strategies for colonizing Europa have since been repurposed. Those immense fusion-powered platforms were indeed deployed, but the life they sustain and nurture through their heat production is not Earth's. The mega-projects churn out more nutrients than had ever been planned, helping the local lifeforms grow in population. The submarine buses, yes, they patrol the Serene Sea. But their passengers are simply Macassians that would like to get from place to place quicker. Some of the habitats once planned now sit across the seafloor, filled not with colonists, but educators and scientists. Together, these people work with the Macassians, helping them to understand the United Nations and what they can do together. Thus, the total livable area of the Serene Sea has been massively expanded. With it has come a rapid growth in all species, carefully managed to not cause too much issues. But it is anticipated that by 2200, the Serene Sea will reach approximately the same total biomass as Earth's oceans. By 2250, they will have doubled it, at which point the explosive growth will be curtailed and brought to a steady level, the Serene Sea by this point teeming with life. In future, there will likely be additional water-filled orbital habitats, helping provide additional natural preserves for the denizens of Europa. And, not so many years after the ice was first broken open, wearing special suits designed to maintain their preferred conditions, Macassians walked, or more accurately, crawled, across the surface of their own world. They gazed upon the stars, the first ever of their kind. And in a great many of them, a burning passion was ignited, one truly alien to them. Now, 50 years from first contact, Macassians have begun to spread out across the United Nations. Their numbers are small, particularly weighed against the gigantic population of United Nations territory. Modern-day Ganymede alone has far more citizens than there are Macassians total. Many Macassians remain on their homeworld, either uninterested in the sights of the stars, unwilling to pause the close bonds that constitute their societies, or preoccupied with bettering their homes before they take to wandering. But they are out there, and every so often, a human may well get the chance to see one in their custom-fitted second skin, the vital life-sustaining apparatus that safely ensconces them. These devices, miracles of design, enable Macassian seekers, as they call themselves, to distinguish themselves from their homebound fellows, to walk upon four legs, while also translating their complex language into more conventional ones, and vice versa. Wander, they do, eternally. Not exploring, no, just seeing the existing sights, meeting the people. Traveling from Earth to Pluto, visiting many popular tourist destinations, before moving on to Alpha Centauri, to Procyon, and half a dozen other places. Perhaps going on even further from home, with Kintsugian's oceans particularly popular. They live on generous bursaries, paid for entirely by the GIJoeVibin habitats, that enable them to go practically anywhere, do anything, see everything. Though there are significant warnings about foodstuffs and activities that may pose harm to them. Often, seekers are accompanied by perma-homes, car-sized water tanks, kept in the cargo holds of their latest vessel, where they can rest without having to wear their second skin, with special airlocks installed to enable the smooth transfer between both mediums. Seekers are particularly obsessed with opportunities to converse with other species about all manner of topics. It is not uncommon for someone to be grilled in immense detail as to the particulars of their lunch, followed by a digression into the conversation partner's earliest childhood memories, or their views on a hot-button political issue. A fairly common difficulty point comes on the matter of genders. As hermaphrodites, the Macassians as a whole have zero concept of sex or gender, and thus struggle rather heavily with any discussion regarding this. Ironically, it is generally considered easier to explain a rocket to them. As a result, a significantly larger than average portion of the human staff tasked with easing seekers into their travels are transgender or non-binary, to try and provide some sort of common ground they can understand. Not all Macassians that visit the stars stay seekers though. A fraction of this fraction, self-christened newcomers, will choose a fresh home, often seemingly at random, with very little rhyme or reason. Without fail, their new, usually a human-dominated nation, hosts will rapidly put in the necessary infrastructure, retrofitting apartments to be vast water tanks. Newcomers stridently reject the term aquarium being applied to these. Newcomers then often dedicate themselves to all manner of intellectual pursuits, taking on multiple university degrees at once for the pure sake of a challenge, or just taking the opportunity to establish more permanent relations with humans, once again launching into barrages of questions at whomever they meet. The Macassians are not useful to the United Nations, not in quite the same way as a Haitian or a Consage may be. People who spend their whole time in your country just seeing the sights, whose suits are built for travel, not labor, are not useful, no. But a human's inability to perform labor would not turn them into a lesser being. And thus the Macassian wanderlust changes nothing. The United Nations helped the Macassians because it was the right thing to do, and it will keep doing that for the rest of time because that is how it should be. Author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.